Hello, everybody. I'm Clayton.
I'm Tom.
I'm Taavi.
And Aiden is here. Aiden, say hi.
Hi.
He will not be joining us for the recording today. Okay, mute your mic. That's disgusting.
Aiden is recording from a forest or something. Jesus.
Bro, I don't know what. Maybe it's the AC or something. I literally don't know what's
Probably
going
is. Probably is that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Yes, welcome to the Deep Focus Show, the podcast that talks about pop culture and movies, specifically with directors. And today we have a continuation of sorts. If you missed out on our last episode, we talked about Spike Jonze. Now we're talking about his, I guess I could say his counterpart, Charlie Kaufman. Mr. Charles Kaufman. What do you guys think of him? What's the first Kaufman written material or directed material that you've seen? How do you distinguish between his writing versus his directing? Let's talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, I think we talked about in Spike Jonze. Also, I'm here again.
Yes, Tom is our guest again. He'll be here for the rest of the month.
Yeah, we talked about
Nice.
how Spike Jonze is able to sort of rein Kaufman in a little bit in those films. And I feel like even then the scripts themselves for adaptation and Being John Malkovich and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, they're all a bit more structured than what he would go on to do later in his career with his own features, where he sort of had all the control. So I think these films are definitely more wild, more experimental, more sort of loose films structurally than the stuff he was writing for other directors. So yeah, he's definitely a one of a kind artist, and it's going to be interesting to talk about these.
Perhaps even a bit more ambitious. I'm not quite sure, but there's a lot of really out there ideas presented in his films, his works with Gondry and Spike Jonze, but this is on a completely different level and extreme that I find a little bit daunting, to be honest. But no, my scores are mostly positive. It's just, man, some of these were incredibly hard to watch. I don't know if Taavi feels that way too, but
Oh yes. Um, basically, I felt like this is an 100% Charlie Kaufman. These films, no one is holding him back, for better or worse, perhaps. There's no Spike Jonze there, or whoever. And he's perhaps just the screenwriter first, so he's just gonna do it. Nothing is holding him back.
Taavi is really. I'm interested to see these scores now. He really set the episode up well.
Yes, he did. You know what? You know what's something so interesting about this director who's written material with both Jonze and Gondry, Michel Gondry. He also has a few ugly ducklings, I guess, with George Clooney. I can't call them that because I haven't seen them, but it's weird. And whenever I associate Charlie Kaufman, I associate him with those two other directors, not a George Clooney. So
well, I suppose that was quite early in his career, and he was still trying to become a name. I think by sort of Being John Malkovich in adaptation, he was a name in Hollywood. People know who he is, or even if they don't know who he is, they've seen at least 2 or 3 of the films he's done.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll definitely be watching those, but maybe not for this podcast, but just in my own free time. I'm really curious about them.
Yeah.
Well, I guess what we'll be doing is ranking these 3 films, kind of a short ranking, sort of like our Ari Aster video and all of our we've done short form rankings before, and in a sense I guess I kind of like ranking longer materials, but these are just so strong, and I'm curious to where each of you guys place these 3 what I think are pretty strong films. So Taavi, you want to go ahead and get on with it?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Clay. I'm gonna start with my number 3, which is his newest film. I'm Thinking of Ending Things. This was the one I've seen previously. Like, this was my second watch. I watched it the first time like when it came out around the time with my parents and one of their friends, and it's definitely not what we expected at the time. I
I cannot imagine watching this with your mom. Like, you see Jesse Plemons, he's the lover boy that everyone falls head over heels for in Friday Night Lights. And if you're casually strolling through Netflix as a not a person familiar with his other Oscar-nominated materials, and then you go and you see that here's a film with Jesse Plemons, Landry, good old Texas boy. Man, I can imagine this would be quite frustrating for people.
Yeah, I don't know. Perhaps I didn't. Perhaps the name Charlie Kaufman should have said something then, but I just thought it would just be like a good thriller. Or
Was this your introduction to Kaufman's written material, or did you watch Eternal Sunshine prior to this?
I've seen Eternal Sunshine like years before and adaptation. Why didn't I didn't I like check the director or something? I don't know. Like, we just picked it out of Netflix and watched it. Perhaps it was a mistake, while I think I liked the most out of that. But yeah, this is basically an interesting watch, but also hard to watch. It's quite slow paced. It has so much dialogue happening. It starts with a 20-minute car ride where they just basically talking and thinking. And like, if I remember correctly, I think this. I'm not sure, did even Netflix say it was like a horror or something? I'm not exactly sure about that factor, but
I think it was a little bit mismarketed. I think it was the trailers were trying to paint it as like a psychological horror, which it kind of is, but it isn't very typical of the genre. It's very different.
Yeah.
Speaking of mismarketing things, I read an article recently that Netflix is done producing passion projects such as, I don't know, they used a specific term to describe Martin Scorsese's The Irishman.
Vanity projects.
Vanity, yeah. Oh my god. It's crazy. And I wonder if this fits the bill with that. I wonder if they're done with this, because this is just wild that it was released on Netflix. I mean, the same place that has Stranger Things and all these other beloved content.
Yeah. And yeah, this has a very psychological vibe to it. I don't know what is it about this. I think this is missing some sort of spark that Kaufman had with John's on board. It kind of feels like a screenwriting effort. Lots of a dialogue thrown at us, and also the over 2 hours runtime isn't helping me personally. I think there's a really solid 90-minute film in this. So, both truth is it's not a fun watch. But there's aspects I do enjoy about it. I enjoy the main actors' performances, and I thought the smaller a screen size was cool, like a 4.3 or there's interesting things that they're doing with the timeline and trying to throw me off, and perhaps they do it also. And then there was the scene with Robert Zemeckis, like a kind of a trailer in the middle, or like a scene, I don't know. That threw me off also. Yeah, I think me talking about doesn't make any sense, but I don't think. But perhaps these are my honest raw notes then. They don't make sense because I don't make sense watching this film, basically.
Yeah.
And like I think these are just like I'm not the biggest fan of this like trying to confuse me the whole way through basically. I don't know, I'm not getting as much out of these sort of films than perhaps some other would, but it looks pretty good and like there's like nothing too wrong with it, but I think my personal watch is gonna not give it the best score. Like but I think it's a good film. Like I respect perhaps Kaufman films more than I really would like to watch this again perhaps. So it's a 3.5. It's a pretty good score, but like I don't know. Like this second, don't need to watch it the third time. But I respect it.
I think those are very fair thoughts on the whole, I would say.
I think they're it's quite honest. I like that. It's okay. I mean, it's this movie's surreal. It's okay. So my bottom film. This movie is entirely conditious. It's all planned, never thought out. What are we to make of Kaufman's assertions? Yeah, I got that film at the bottom.
What film? Sorry?
I'm thinking of Ending Things.
Right, okay. You didn't make that very clear.
Yeah, I think this is a quotable movie. It's so funny because I forgot I saw this once like you did, Taavi, and I forgot how much of this movie I kind of ingrained in my psyche. There's a scene where they're talking about that Christmas song, "Baby It's Cold Outside." Yeah, and I had a similar argument with somebody, and I think I might have used the exact same points that Jesse Buckley's character pulled from in this movie. Probably subconsciously thinking about this film because it certainly left an impression on me, a very daunting impression on the first watch that I honestly didn't like it as much. But watching it again, and I do think it's good to rewatch things because watching this again, I'm not going to say I had an emotional connection with it. It's certainly not as much of an emotional connection as I do my top two, but I appreciated the art form of this. I think a lot of this film is very well crafted. The makeup is so good. The way they play with everybody's age here, the purposeful, and it is purposeful editing, the screenplay, the dialogue. I love, honestly, any movie that has moments of just pure thought and dialogue. I fall for that kind of shit. There's a movie called The Humans, which is adapted from a play, a production, and it's all set in one location inside of a house. And that movie is also pure dialogue, and I really resonate with that kind of stuff. The score is fantastic. Obviously, there's Oklahoma. And Jessie Buckley's performance, I think this might be her best role. She has wild characters in her repertoire. Man, she's quite a powerhouse. Honestly, she's somebody to look out for. It's mostly a perfect film for me. I love the line: "Fake movie ideas want to live. They grow in your brain, replacing real ideas. That's what makes them dangerous." I love that line. It's strange seeing David Thewlis, yes, seeing him go from this relatively shorter animated character from the last film, Anomalisa, which I'll get to this kind of taller, handsome. Or he was a bit handsome in Anomalisa, but I don't want to call him that because he was also gross. But it's strange seeing him go from that to this taller, older, wiser role. Well, he's not really wise. I love his whiny gripe about feeling sad on a painting if there's no person in that painting that feels sad. I think it says a lot about the types of characters David Thewlis portrays, and also reminded me of that character from the previous film here. Strange cuts in this film. So strange. There's a cut that looked like there were 2 staircases in Jake's parents' house. I don't know if any of you guys noticed that, but it was really weird. Like behind that door, there was another staircase. I don't know. It was very strange. I love the conversations in the car. That's probably my favorite thing about this film is like I said, just that long stream of consciousness dialogue that's being brought out. I love the line about wine being a depressant, and Jake says it's important to keep that in mind before one is to make decisions under wine's influence. And then right after that they start talking about movies, and I think that pretty much sums up this whole film. It's essentially a film putting us in the mind of an old age person. It's really hard to sum up this film, but in a way kind of recollects ideas of John Malkovich to a much more surreal degree. It's almost like Kaufman is telling us that he's aware how depressing some of his films can be. Kind of like that line about the wine being a depressant, just like his movies are. And holy shit, the way Buckley describes a woman under the influence. I tried to do that bit at the beginning, but it didn't work. Love that. One of my favorite sequences in this film. This movie is kind of heavy-handed to me. I'm teetering on 2 scores right now. Somehow this movie is complex and surreal, but also very extremely forward with its thematic elements. It's clever. It's a bit daunting as well. I can't imagine what parents and fans of Friday Night Lights are supposed to feel whenever they see Jesse Plemons in this. And Jesse Plemons is quite a force of nature in this film, just like he is in every film. Like there's he's been in 5 Academy Award nominated movies for Best Picture, I believe, in the last 5 years. So like this guy deserves recognition. It's crazy the amount of work he put out, and compare it to his peers and in his upbringings with Friday Night Lights. So show that I actually was going to be an extra on whenever I was in middle school, right a couple hours from where I live in Pflugerville, Texas. But I never ended up doing that. But it's crazy to compare that to his peers who tried to emulate Jesse Plemons' roles, but they just never got around to it. But going back to this movie, I can't say if I want to watch it again or not. I kind of do, but maybe like once every 5 years for me, if I'm in the right mood. Like I said, I'm teetering on 2 scores, but you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to go 4.5 because that was my initial.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Whoa!
Yeah. I fucking hated this movie at first, but it's just one of those things. Like it turned around on me, and I had this impression that I'm scared of this film. That this kind of content makes me anxious, and it does. But I think the fact that I can feel that is a good sign.
Wow. Clay has been transformed into a Charlie Kaufman fanboy before my very eyes.
Yeah.
What a sight. What a sight.
It's
Wow.
wild. He's such a visionary, just a talent, unparalleled.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm glad you liked it so much, but I pretty much disagree with every single thing you said, but we'll get into that.
Really? Okay. I guess
anyway,
it's not your number 3.
No, it's not. My number 3 is Anomalisa, which is how you pronounce it, Clay.
What did I say?
What did you say? You said Animalisa or something. Yeah.
Oh, I think I might have. Yeah, Animalisa, something.
Anyway, it doesn't really matter because it's not that good a film.
Oh.
Yeah, this was the one I hadn't seen going in, and I kind of wish I hadn't seen it still because kind of put Kaufman down in my estimations a little bit because he gets accused of self-indulgence a lot. I think this is the film it applies to the most. I think the stop motion is quite cool, and I'm a massive Tom Noonan fan, so figuring out that he did all the voices for the, you have the two main actors and then the rest of the cast voiced by Tom Noonan, I thought that was really cool. We'll get to him again with Synecdoche, New York. And yeah, I love David Thewlis and Jennifer Jason Leigh as well, and I love stop motion, so I was sure I was going to love this. And I didn't. I mean, I do think it's kind of a shame that all of his films flopped as much as they did. They all lost money. Well, these two did, and then obviously I'm thinking of ending things that a lot of people watching it that were not the target audience because it just got chucked on Netflix. And that's kind of sad because he really is a visionary. He's had a few scripts that haven't been greenlit. But I don't know. I just wish this film. I don't know. I guess I'll get into it. So if we go through my notes that I did throughout the film from start to finish, I quite like the bit where people in the hotel don't understand his accent because he has a very northern English accent, which I think is quite funny. It's a very distinctive voice he's got, and I thought it was quite a funny detail to add. And I thought it was interesting that it's called the Fragoli Hotel after the Fragoli delusion, which is where someone believes that different people are a single person who changes appearance. So that was a cool little detail in there that I liked. In many ways, the film is about the search for the real connections in life, which can distract from what is actually real. And it's kind of like a caution that the grass isn't always greener. That's kind of how I read it. That the exciting distractions often don't have the substance of what one is used to in everyday life. Even if it feels mundane while you're living it, the idealized lives of other people, maybe not as good as you think, sort of mirroring the themes of being John Malkovich. I think my main problem here is that I don't really know what he's trying to say other than that. Like, I get the central theme, but the characters he chooses to use to portray that are a bit puzzling. One thing I struggled with was that Michael is a very unlikable protagonist, and I don't really know why it's through him that Kaufman decides to go explore these themes, because I don't know. I know that often his protagonists, like Craig in Being John Malkovich and like Caden in Synecdoche, New York, they're sort of extensions of him, right? And they are sort of in a pool of self-hatred in a lot of his films. But I don't know. Michael just comes across as a weird pervert idiot, like really insensitive, really obnoxious. I just hated him, and like he has this interaction with Bella, who is an old flame of his, and it shows that he really doesn't understand how he has impacted other people's lives. And okay, yeah, that's very clear from the film, but what is it trying to say about the character? Like, when all of Charlie Kaufman's protagonists are extensions of him, I don't really know how to react to a character that is this deplorable. Is the film trying to make a comment on celebrities having power over women who admire them? Because that's the vibe I get from the scene where he first meets Lisa and Emily. I started to feel really icky at this point because the film goes in a direction that I don't particularly like. I don't find their relationship wholesome in the slightest. And maybe that was the point, but I don't think that's made very clear. And even if it is the point, I felt very uncomfortable watching it. And, even with Caden and Charlie and Craig, the other protagonists of his films, they had likable traits. And there's nothing in Michael that draws me to him. I don't find him interesting. I just find him really just a prick. So I can see how this was developed as a play. That does make sense to me. And I think maybe it would have worked better on the stage. I think it's kind of ridiculous how much time is spent on the sex scene. It's a bit, I don't know, it just goes on for a long time of just people who had to animate a stop motion sex scene. It's a bit weird. And even though this is the shortest film by far, it feels so much longer than it is. It's like 90 minutes, but it feels like over 2 hours. It just drags on and on and on because I had no investment in the characters. But there are some good aspects, I suppose. The dream sequence is well done. I think it's very creepy.
Did you think it was a dream whenever it first came on? Because that threw me off.
Yeah, I don't think it's made very clear what it is either way, really. I think, yeah, and then there's the scene towards the end where he's having breakfast with Lisa and he's getting annoyed at her eating habits, and he's like, oh no, don't clink your fork on your teeth while he's talking with his mouth full. And I'm like, is that meant to point out how hypocritical he is? Or is he just not a good person? Like, I don't really get what Kaufman's getting at with this film at all. I think it severely lacks the heart and the intrigue that is key to any good Charlie Kaufman script. In fact, I think it has none of it. Intrigue, maybe some, but I just find it a piss boring, completely dull, really tossed off rubbish. It's well made and the voice acting is good, so 2.5 stars. I really don't like this film.
Rubbish is a strong word to use for that. 2.5? Okay,
Yeah.
that's okay.
2.5 stars, and it's brought up by good animation and good voice acting. Sorry, I wanted to like this film, but I really wanted to like this film, but I just didn't. So
Yeah, well, I will agree that the character is hard to read. So
hey,
Um, I don't know what was happening there, but let's continue.
sorry, I was just very disappointed in my guy Charlie. Sorry.
So my number 2 is also the stop motion film. I don't know how to say that film. I Anomalisa?
Anomalisa, yeah.
Anomalisa. Okay.
it's a play on words, anomaly, and the other character's name is Lisa. So
Ooh,
yeah.
okay. Yeah. What I really liked about this film was basically what we see in the film. It looks great. Usually with stop motion animated films, I think it's always very very cool to see how the characters and whatever moves around and how it's made and so on. And I don't know, I started to think like I don't even know what's like a good example for adult stop motion animated films. Perhaps this is perhaps one Google search away from me, but I couldn't from the top of my head really think of what's targeted to adults. I think the voice acting is also great. It took me off a little when I kind of started with most of the characters sounding the same, like what is happening, but that gets kind of explained in the film later on. Yeah, I don't know. I think the problem with animated films, like I find it hard to talk about them. I always seem to get so behind on the how it looks part and how the characters sound. Like the story is fine, pretty simple story, which I kind of like. Though it's not like I'm thinking of ending things where I was totally confused for the most part, but like I wasn't that confused by the film, which was I think a good pace. Perhaps I think Tom was correct that this maybe could be a play or something with like a non-animated film, perhaps. But my positives really was how the animation was made, and I think the characters were fine. Obviously they are animated characters, but they feel somewhat real with their imperfections and all. And I don't know, like this is also a 3.5 film. I wasn't so sure. I think it's closer to the 4-star rating. Yeah, it's a good film still. Like I don't really have much to say about the film.
I just
Just
want to
listen to
say
Tom.
I just want to say I had it down as 3 stars, but when talking about it, I realized I was too angry to give it 3 stars, so I gave it 2.5. Which
Oh wow.
I know has happened on this podcast before. So
Yes, it
Yeah.
has. Yes, it has. But actually, in an opposite direction. Well, actually, no. Spielberg. Fucking okay. Moving on. Anomalisa. Play on words. Okay, so a couple things. Surprisingly, Tom's wrong. It's not that bad. You don't.
come on! It's a terrible film. Just it's so creepy and just like as soon as you think for 5 seconds about his intention of the film, it makes me feel bleh. It's just like,
Look, you know what
ugh.
else is another film that has a creepy protagonist that everybody loves? Taxi Driver.
Yeah, but
I'm not a big fan of.
that isn't like with Charlie Kaufman's films. All of his protagonists are like mirror images of him, and he writes in a way that is part of his personality. It's not like the writer of Taxi Driver was like, I'm going to make a movie about myself. It's like that's what all of Charlie Kaufman's films are. So when the protagonist comes out like this, it's just a bad look. It's not saying anything. It's just very, yeah. Anyway, it's your turn, so I'll shut up.
Maybe this is the ugly side of Charles Kaufman. You know what? So it's this movie took 2 years to make. The animation stop motion. It's incredible. Came out in 2015, but there's a lot of allusions to how people acted in the era of fucking Donald Trump. So really, really interesting. Yeah, this movie took 2 years. It's actually not a complete Charles Kaufman directed film. He directed this with a co-director of the same creator of the Adult Swim television series Moral Oral, which actually single-handedly got me into the Mountain Goats. FYI, great band. Our lead character, portrayed by David Thewlis, Fargo and Harry Potter fame, amongst others, I'm sure. Side note: what is your guys' favorite performance of David's? I thought he was really good as a villain in season 3 of Fargo.
I've not seen Fargo, but probably I'm thinking of ending things. I haven't seen him in much. So
I'm gonna say I'm thinking of ending things too. Perhaps I can't remember really what he's done.
He isn't exactly. I don't want to say he's a typecast performer like James Gandolfini, but he does portray mostly an antagonist of the film, especially in Fargo season 3. Check that out, great performance. Our lead character claims to have psychological problems. Like Tom said, it's reflective of a real syndrome called Fragoli syndrome, where people perceive everyone to be exactly the same person. The actor who plays Sammy in Synecdoche, New York, he's fantastic. Love the guy, and I love his vocal performance in this movie. The way he's able to portray different characters in this film, but also he has to balance that act of having the same inflection and same tonalities for everybody, even though these are all different people. So it's kind of great voice acting, I think. David's character, I don't think he has a psychological problem. I don't think our character here is crazy. I don't think he's a madman. I don't think he has Fragoli syndrome. I think that aspect of it, I think that's just a storytelling device that we as an audience is supposed to kind of grasp. I think our lead is really just honestly just like Tom said, he's a bad person. He's not good. He's not a good person. There's an interesting debate to be had if it's morally correct to disvalue someone else's own disillusions, like I'm doing right now to this piece of fiction. Obviously, I would never do that to another person in real life. Like, if you think you are delusional, seek help, please. There's a conversation with our protagonist and the cab driver where the cab driver talks about language and kind of talks about his like Tom, you were saying, like his very unique accent here. The cab driver essentially kind of mocks our protagonist's accent in a way. He sort of idolizes it. I think this film has a lot to say about language because shortly before the big sex scene, which I'll get to, Jennifer Jason Leigh's character is asked to recite her favorite song, which is "Girls Just Want to Have Fun" by Cyndi Lauper, and she doesn't sound particularly amazing whenever she's singing, and it's actually very gross that David's character's fascination with her. But right before they have at it, Lisa, played by Jennifer, sings the same Cyndi Lauper song again, but this time in Italian. And David's character, who I can't, for whatever reason, I guess it's because I don't like the guy, I can't remember the protagonist's name.
Michael,
admit
I
that.
said this. I said this 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, I dislike him so much that I just don't want to remember his name. But yeah, Michael. Michael's in awe of Lisa singing "Girls Just Want to Have Fun" in Italian, and Jennifer's character also talks about Portuguese being an essential language of Brazil, separate from the rest of South America. And I think if our lead is obviously annoyed with that taxi cab driver at the beginning, why isn't he bothered with presumably Jennifer's faux fascination with the way accents are sound? The moment Lisa, Jennifer Jason Leigh's character, mentions the zoo is a moment that David's perception of her changes. Recalling the taxi cab driver also mentioned the zoo. There's a scene where that same taxi cab driver is talking about one of the zoos, and obviously he's very annoyed with this. A sequence which shows there's a sequence after they have sex that turns the night turns into day, and if you notice, there's also a billboard for the zoo. And it's that moment that Lisa's speech slowly goes away and forms into everybody else. I think this film asks a lot of questions. I'm curious to watch it again later down the road. Not anytime soon. It's not that good of a film. I'm going to say the big sex scene here, which I knew was teased for a while. From what I've heard about this film, that it's extremely explicit. I thought it was relatively tame to my expectations. Tom's right. It goes on forever. Like, there's no need for that. I will say the man gives fellatio to the woman, and that kind of reminds me how fucked up the MPAA rating system is. Like, you show a guy getting oral sex, and that can potentially get a PG-13 rating, but heaven forbid you get a woman that gets head. That's grounds for NC-17. Ooh, it's fucking ridiculous. And Blue Valentine almost got that rating system for that reason. So, but I think this film is good. I think it poses a lot of interesting questions. I don't want to take it too personally to Charles Kaufman. It's 4.5 stars. It's not a 5. But I do like it a little bit better than I'm thinking of ending things.
Wait, you keep saying Charles. It makes me laugh instead of Charlie.
Yes,
that's funny. Sorry, it's not me next. I just wanted to butt in with a little comment. I will say, you haven't sold me at all on the film being good. You kind of just said that the sex scene was long, and that was all I got from what you said.
Well, it is. Too long.
Yeah. Is it me next or is it Taavi next? It's Taavi next.
It's you. It's your turn to talk.
I was about to say, like, you can butt in all you want.
Well, you're saying my number 2 is I'm thinking of ending things. Interesting.
Yes.
Nice prediction, because it's correct. My number 2
Nice.
is I'm thinking of ending things. And you know what? Very disappointing rewatch for me on this, because there are a lot of times where Clay would be like dissing this film, and I would have to come to its aid and say, "Hey, you're being harsh. You should watch it again." And I watched it again, and it isn't as good as I remember, which is interesting. I'm usually the guy that is like, Charlie Kaufman's films need multiple watches because he puts so much detail into the scripts, and I think, if anything, he's trying too hard to fill this script with detail. I mean, it's still a lot better than Anomalisa, and it is a pretty strong film. Yeah, I think on a rewatch, a lot of things come clearer. Like knowing that Jake and the janitor are the same person, and that they are also the protagonist, and that the entire film is, this old man, rather than recounting events that have happened, it's just this big jumbled mess of what his life could have been, with some parts split in of his actual life, which explains the different names for the young woman character played by Jessie Buckley, who represents various different women in Jake's life, and also the changing in age of the parents, almost on a dime. I think the opening is reminiscent of the opening of Adaptation with the voiceover. I think that's quite interesting how it does that. It sort of shows Kaufman still using the same techniques. And yeah, it's a film about regret. I think I'll get to why I disagree with what Clay was saying, because I think the car scenes are really what drags this film down. Not to say they're not good. I just think they're way bloated. and I kind of agree with what Taavi was saying about the runtime. 2 hours and 15 minutes is not justified, especially on a rewatch, I found, because I kind of know where we're heading to, and a lot of the intrigue and mystery of these car scenes, and how long is this going to go on for? What are they going to end up talking about? And I think that is sort of gone on a second watch for me, anyway. For me, the best stuff in the film is the middle section in the house. I love the house as a setting. I love that it's sort of an old building. I think Clay mentioned that details of the house change throughout the film. There's quite an eerie vibe to it. And I think as much as I do enjoy Jesse Plemons and Jesse Buckley, both do a great job, Toni Collette and David Thewlis give the best performances in the film, in my opinion, as Jake's eccentric parents through various stages of their lives. They're at once realistic and like parents I've met before when I would go over and stay with friends, and also entertaining in how over the top and strange they can be. A lot of really funny moments with them at the dinner table, really funny, awkward moments, which I liked. I noticed a couple of things of the young woman taking on the traits of Jake's mother, and I think there's a lot of inconsistencies there that I think are supposed to represent his memory not being so great, but I don't know. I don't really buy that as much. Like, if you're just throwing inconsistencies in the film, like Taavi was saying, to just confuse the audience, I don't know how productive that is, to be honest. I think the romantic comedy parody that the janitor watches is pretty hilarious, with the directed by Robert Zemeckis at the end, which is funny because Kaufman had to get Zemeckis' permission to put that in the film, and Zemeckis was fine with it, which I thought was pretty funny as a sort of behind the scenes thing.
Yeah.
And I think my favorite scene in the film is when the older version of the father appears with signs of dementia. And I think one of the most realistic portrayals of that illness I've seen, especially with how Thewlis looks so much more frail than the earlier scenes. And, a lot of the time, I don't know if you guys have seen the Suspiria remake, but in that, Tilda Swinton plays an old man and wears like makeup and old age makeup as well. And I don't really buy it as an old man. I kind of saw it because it's treated as a twist, and I don't know. I kind of saw it coming because the performance isn't that convincing to me. Thewlis does the aged up performance really well. How he's sort of like hunched over and he looks so skinny, and his clothes are sort of hanging off him. I just think he does a really, really good job selling the performance, and that scene is just brilliant. It's really heartbreaking, and yeah, I think it's just really well done, and I think Kaufman clearly had experience with someone with the illness to be able to channel that into a scene, and I can't go on about that scene enough. I think it's brilliant, great acting and makeup. Also, Buckley's character changes her accent and vocabulary quite a few times in the film, which is interesting. And yeah, this is where I like the first batch of car scenes, and then the second batch of car scenes is where it definitely gets less interesting. It starts to lose me. The pacing just gets ground to a halt. I do think Plemons and Buckley are great together. They have great chemistry. I think the movie is really well shot, especially in these sections with the nighttime snow sequences. I, like Taavi mentioned as well, I like the claustrophobic nature of the aspect ratio. And I think the final 30 minutes are pretty good. It's quite nightmarish, really strange editing, like Clay mentioned, really good dialogue. The idea that Jake and the young woman never got together, and this is all just in his head, in the janitor's head, and he's just thinking back to what could have been, is an interesting twist, which sort of hint towards the ultimate reveal that these are all events he's thinking about as he is about to die, which is the final shot we see is him snowed under in his car and he commits suicide. Is the main interpretation that's drawn from the film. And of course, the final musical sequence as well, I thought was really powerful. And then the fade to blue, which I think, similarly to the fade in Synecdoche, New York, which is another trifecta, by the way, is very similarly used at the end of this film. And I think it's quite bloated and it doesn't justify its length. And I did like it more on my first watch. But I think there are some great moments and some great ideas, and the performances are absolutely off the charts. So yeah, I think I'm going to go 4 stars for this one. I think it's a pretty strong film. I had it at 4.5 before rewatching, and it's down to a 4. So I still think it's really good. but I think Kaufman definitely gets caught up in all of his ideas. He has so many great ideas, and it kind of just doesn't all hold together quite enough for me, which is why it lands at number 2 at 4 stars.
So this is funny. I wonder if we can keep this track up because comparatively to our Spike Jones lists, Taavi and I have the same order in every film, and but you have just a little bit of a switch up. That's kind of hilarious to me.
Well, I'm here to keep the show interesting. What can I say?
And you certainly do.
Well, yeah, no one else is going to shout at you for having wrong opinions, so someone has to do that.
Yeah, basically.
Hey, Taavi, we're the correct ones here.
Yeah, I don't know. We are something at least.
Yeah.
So it's a trifecta for all of us.
Woo!
And
Yay!
Yes.
that word is really terrifying me. Synecdoche? Doki? I don't know.
Synecdoche, yeah.
Synecdoche.
Yeah.
New York. I'm just gonna call it the New York now on.
Okay.
I think the city is pronounced differently. Is it Schenectady, the city, or is it? But the movie is called Synecdoche. I don't know.
Let's just call it his debut film.
Might be. Yeah. I'm gonna predict like Tom and Clay are gonna be the bigger fans of this film, but I was a huge fan of Philip Seymour Hoffman in this film. I think he does an absolutely amazing performance in this New York film. I don't know, that actor always seems to sold me every performance he makes in any film he's in, and I think there's great supporting performances also, like Samantha Morton and Michelle Williams. Very nice dialogue in this film. I'm gonna say the same things perhaps I said in the I'm thinking of ending things. It's a tough for me to follow this film. This definitely needs a rewatch or something. I don't know, I just had troubles following the film sometimes, and I think it's clearly his best solo film, but I think for me I will rate some of those Jones films higher than this. But it's intriguing still. Tough to follow. That's my main problem. I'm not smart enough. It's I don't know, some of the characters felt really cold. I don't know, was it the point of this film? But it's tough when you watch a film, you respect the making of it and multiple aspects, but you're in a way still not getting out of the plot too much, and you just feel kind of, what did even happen in this film? And that seems to be my problem with Charlie Kaufman's solo directed films. You gotta watch it just because of Philip Seymour Hoffman. I'm just gonna try to people to remember that aspect the most. I would say
he is phenomenal in the film for sure.
100%.
Yeah. I gave it a 4 star. It's a very good film. Like I watched it very recently, and I'm still kind of like, what even happened? So yeah, but I think there was interesting ideas shown, like the what's reality and what's fiction and so on, and I think them trying to build the city on stage production was kind of cool, and how it affects all of them, and like obviously Caden's sicknesses really started to affect him, and all that, like there's interesting ideas shown in the film, but I'm sure Tom and Clay are gonna love this film and talk about what happened in this film really, and I'm gonna let Clay talk about it now.
Wow.
Well, here's the thing, and this is a message to my audience. I am not fucking here to spoon feed you ideas, okay? And I mean that with so much care and devotion because I love this film, okay? I'm not trying to. I'm not trying. This Kaufman wouldn't want me to do that. It would feel disingenuous, you know. He wants people to interpret his films on their own time, at their own pace. And I'm going to be honest, I'm about to make a bold statement here. And yeah, that sounded a little bit extreme, but this is going to be even more extreme. Not only is this the best directorial debut I've ever seen in my life, but this is the best movie I have ever seen put to screen in my entire fucking life.
Whoa.
It's so good. Everything, and I mean everything, is perfection. Absolutely unparalleled genius. No, I'm kidding. Genius. No flaws whatsoever. The end is built into the beginning, my friends. I watched this movie. I had an immediate reaction. I have personal feelings to it. The next day I quit my part-time job the day after that. And that job was literally weighing me down. And I feel so much better now because there's a lot of good things on the horizon for me. And that's awesome. But I usually like to go into what makes a film. You know, why does this film matter? What does it mean for a film to matter? What is matter? This is a film that is open to interpretation. It's going to make you ask those kind of questions. It warrants a rewatch, which I haven't done yet, but I will. I find it incredibly horrifying to watch in some ways, and that's a good thing. It's visceral. It has a visceral reaction for me. I will rewatch this. I may even make a solo video going into what I interpret it if I have that kind of time on my hands. Another thing about this film, the way it you can feel time in this film, and there are cuts in this movie that literally, if you look closely, you can see the passage of time. But it's so subtle that it actually makes you feel the passage of time. And I don't think I've ever seen a movie do that, because you don't notice those kind of details on a first watch. I may sound like a fake fan, but there's no possible way for me to do this justice. I could spend hours watching videos analyzing things, and like I said, I'm not going to spoon feed you, and I'm not trying to be mean whenever I say that. I'm trying to help you because please watch this movie. 20 different people can have watched this, and 20 differing ideas and perspectives of their own interpretation of this film can be made from it. And that's the beauty of Charlie Kaufman. He's a director that's open to that. The way he uses images and cuts, and like I said, the forward motion of time, a seemingly real life thing of matter that seemingly connects each and every part of human existence. And I say seemingly because nothing is real. I love this movie. It's horrific. It's maybe worth it to view this movie in a different perspective than whenever you first saw it. Maybe if you watched this film and you became incredibly depressed afterwards, view it through the lens of happiness. View it through the lens of acceptance. That could probably change your perspective on it. View it as our lead here, Philip Seymour Hoffman's character Tard, which actually quite an interesting name, but view it as he is a happy person instead of somebody miserable, which on the surface, maybe that film tends to make you think that this person has no desire or passion in his life, but that's quite the opposite. The fact that this can make substantial positive substance, it says a lot. It's 5 stars. It's probably my favorite film of all time, and I'm about to cry. It's a rare, life-changing experience. It's personal to me. I can't really say as much as I want to without it seeming like I'm vomiting my emotions right now, but please watch this movie. It's so good. I love it. You seemingly may like it. It's a film that begs to be discussed, but it's also still a fresh personal experience for me that I'd like to keep to myself. And I love it.
Nice.
Taavi was complaining that he couldn't follow me up. How am I supposed to follow that up? Thanks, Clay.
It's great.
Okay. Well, I'll gather my thoughts. So yeah, my number one is also Synecdoche, New York, which I think is a pretty clear number one. I think even with Jones, even though we all had the same number one, I think all of us, like I even could see how someone could have Bing John Malkovich number one, or I could see how someone could have her at number one. But I think with this, it's just these three films are kind of similar in their approach, and this is the one that really nails it the best. I think this is his most. I mean, saying it's his most accessible is a bit weird because it isn't really that accessible. But I feel like the puzzle that is this film is a lot easier to crack and to solve than the puzzle of the other two films, is what I would say. And I think it has more elements that are traditional to storytelling. And I do mean accessible, like relatively to the other two. And I think, yeah, there's a lot of interesting things going on in this film. I have seen this film probably 4 or 5 times, and the reason for that is because it's one of my best friend's favorite film of all time. So you're not alone in that, Clay. He has seen it probably 10, 11 times, and he always talks about theorizing it and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, it was an interesting watch because I've always sort of viewed it. I've seen it, with him in mind a lot of the time, and I kind of formed opinions with him. So to be able to watch it on my own and form my own thoughts about it was almost like a new experience. So
and like I said, I could go into an analysis with this, but I feel like I would be opening up a huge can of worms that I feel would be very daunting to the audience of this podcast.
Yeah. So, and I mean, we talked about Philip Seymour Hoffman. He is probably my favorite actor ever, just ever. And I wouldn't say this is his best performance because the competition is extremely tough, but it's up there. He goes through a range of emotions. He goes through, his character has got so much going on within him. And, I think this film is full of purposeful choices. Like, I don't know, the opening with the kitchen where Caden is reading the newspaper and it says October the 11th or whatever, and then he pulls the milk out and he says, "Oh, it's expired," and it says expires October the 13th. So you're seeing days pass by within one scene, and it's like Clay was saying, how it shows the passage of time. It's almost unsettling. It's sort of a film about watching time slip away from you. And I think, yeah, you could look at it in a very nihilistic way, but you could also look at it in a way that's sort of saying, go for that passion project, do what makes you happy, because look, we have what feels like under 2 hours of time on this planet, which is how this film makes it feel. And yeah, Catherine Keener shows up again, who was a mainstay of the Spike Jonze films, so it was nice to see her again, a bit of continuity there, which I liked. I think the scene where Olive is just like shouting, "I don't want blood," it's like really great. There's a lot of like nice, light-hearted, funny moments in this film, which maybe you don't get as much of in the other two. And then it's like she's shouting that, and then really deadpan delivery from Hoffman. He's just saying, "I was just trying to explain plumbing," and it's like such a silly scene that I just think is really funny. And obviously, you'll notice as well in the background of a lot of scenes, Sammy is sort of peering over the corner or behind a tree, or it really gives this unsettling feeling. On my first watch, I was like, "Who is this guy? Like, are we ever going to get introduced to him? Are we going to find out who he is?" And eventually you do, and you find out that he's been following Caden for 20 years to try and understand his life and to be able to play him in this play. Again, Samantha Morton was mentioned. I think she's one of the most underrated actresses I can think of. I think she is fantastic. She provides so much depth to Hazel in terms of her sweetness, and also how she has the capacity to sort of have her own way when she wants to as well. I think she brings so much layers, and you really need someone strong to be able to work alongside Hoffman for this film, and she absolutely nails it. She's just as good as he is in the film, in my opinion.
I don't think I'm as familiar with most of her work, but yeah, you did say she was going to be in the movie Her, right? Right after this.
She was originally gonna voice the Samantha. That's why it was called Samantha, the AI, because it was originally.
I never made that connection.
Yeah. So
Very cool.
yeah, she's great. And then I kind of made a joke that this film just hired all my favorite 21st century actresses, because I love Emily Watson as well, and Jennifer Jason Leigh, and Michelle Williams, and obviously Samantha Morton. So I can't really complain about the cast. It's really all people I really admire and love. I think the burning house scene is very important to the film. It's like the very deadpan, I'm concerned about dying in the fire. It's kind of about how people are willing to settle for something because of the economy or because of access to somewhere. And this house is literally burning down, and she's like, well, I could get this house, but I'm a bit concerned about the fire. And it's sort of like saying how our society has made things that are really not worth acceptable, if that makes sense. And then obviously Caden keeps seeing himself on the advertising for chemotherapy, which I'm not sure what to make of that. I don't know if that's sort of a jumbled chronology, because obviously he gets sick later. I'm not sure. I think Clay was either mentioned the score for I'm Thinking of Ending Things. I don't really pick up on much of the score for that film, but I think the score for this film is fantastic, really tragic, really well done by John Bryan, who is a really good music producer as well. Produced albums like When the Pawn by Fiona Apple. I just think he's great. Worked with Mac Miller and stuff like that as well. Yeah, and then there's there's the moment where he gets sick and he just calls 911 and he just starts shouting, "I'm sick!" And it's like a really darkly funny moment as well. It's Kaufman's always, when he's at his best, he's showing that life is tragic, but there is comedy, in everyday life as well. And then the idea that Caden thinks it's been a week, but his wife is saying that it's been a year, and it's like this interesting dynamic that he is way behind the time. There's the whole thing with the book written by a 4-year-old, which is pretty funny. I'm not sure how much of intentional it was, but that is also how old he says Olive is throughout the film, even though she's aging, is 4 years old. Same age child who wrote the book, which I think is a connection in the sense that you get the suicide, that child then killed themselves, which is sort of adding a darker layer to his worry about Olive being on the other side of the world. I don't know if that was intentional that they were the same age, but that's kind of what I drew from it. And then it's really interesting when he meets Michelle Williams' character, and then they decide that they're going to have sex, and then it cuts to them getting married, which is such an insanely jarring moment, but it works so well with what the film's trying to say. I do not really like the airplane scene with the therapist author. It feels very on the nose and a bit strange, and yeah, there's this this portion of the film I don't really like, where he travels to Europe and Olive is like a stripper, and I don't know. I can see what he's going for, but it's always the part of the film that I get disengaged from a little bit. And yeah, there's obviously Sammy being at Hazel's party where Caden tries to kill himself, which Sammy later does kill himself in a very similar manner. I think the idea that when Caden meets Hazel, then when she's moved on and he's distraught that she's been able to move on, that's kind of a very real moment, and I know that people definitely feel that quite often. I really love the scene where Sammy first shows up for his audition. Sammy is such a great character, and Tom Noonan is just amazing in the film. I love how sort of blunt that is put across, that he's like, I've been following you for 20 years. It's just like really cool moment. I think the rapid aging of the characters is very striking, and like Clay said, it's done very effectively in the sense that you sort of slowly realize, thanks to the editing, what is happening, and that the characters are aging and quicker than you can keep track of. And you mentioned the end is built to the beginning. Most of your time is spent dead or not being born, from the reenacted funeral scene. Both those lines very important to understanding the film, and again, I think it is more a call to action of, you know, using your life while you have it rather than a pessimistic view of life. Obviously, he then gets given the earpiece to act out his final hours, and the final cue of "Die" that really sums up the movie to me is how he gets so involved in his art, and you know, even when he's dying, he's thinking about the next thing he wants to add to it, and sort of saying that no art project is finished, and that is something that while it, you know, the film does present itself as kind of a nightmarish time passing before you can grab onto it, I think at the same time it's showing that, you know, art can be something to channel your frustration of the everyday life into, and something to spend your time doing. And you know, there's definitely, like Clay was saying, that there's some happiness in Caden, even if he doesn't show it all the time. He is, especially when he's working, he is able to get a lot of you know, fulfillment from what he's doing. And you know, as much as I love this film and find it fascinating, I feel like it does, again, a typical with Kaufman, really, perhaps have too many ideas for its own good for it to be, you know, a 5-star film for me. I think, you know, my threshold for a 5 is maybe a bit less than some people's, and that's okay. It's still a really strong film, and perhaps the most ambitious film I've ever watched in terms of how it presents time and people's relations to each other, and you know, even down to the end credits song, which is a very deliberate choice, with the line "Life is precious every minute, even more so with you in it," which I think is a nice way to sum up my thoughts on the film. So yeah, 4.5 stars for Synecdoche, New York. I think it's really, really good, and you know, maybe if I liked the second half of the film more, or should I say the third quarter of the film, because I like the final part, but there's that little stretch that I'm not over the moon with. I think it is really strong, and I can see why you would have such a reaction out of it, Clay. I think it's really, really good, and it gets better every time you watch it. So
yeah, no, I mean the reaction was quite strong. It was emotional, very emotional, and you know, I feel like you can watch this through any kind of you can watch this from your left brain and also from your right brain, and what I find beautiful about this film. So I liked it a lot.
Yeah,
But I get it. I
don't
get
have any brain.
you can also watch it with no brain.
Yeah, I think that's just to add to that, I think another, like I said, it being a bit ambitious for its own good, I do totally get what you mean, Taavi. I think that's what stops it from being a 5 for me, is that it isn't just a movie you can just chuck on, even if I do think it's easier to do it with this film than with his other 2 directorial films. If it was a film like Adaptation, even though Adaptation is really smart and really well made and really got a lot of depth, it is also a film you can just watch and have a good time with.
Yeah,
And I don't think Synecdoche has that as much for me. Although I'd probably like it better than Malkovich and better than Her. So it's my second favorite September film so far.
Oh, nice, very cool.
Yeah, This totally felt like something that Clay would enjoy, and Tom also, and just
we're the nerds. We're
lots
the
of
nerds.
themes. Yeah. I just want like spoon-fed ideas from me.
Don't worry, Taavi. Wes Anderson is coming soon, so you don't have much longer to wait for your stupid, vapid. Hey, look how pretty this film is. Anyway,
thank you.
Do you guys have any closing thoughts on Kaufman? We're done with that era until we get to Michel Gondry. Not this year, though. We have the schedule booked for the rest of the year. But maybe Tom can come on for Michel at some point, because I'd love to hear his thoughts on Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Yeah, I think for me, I do think that Kaufman's finest work is when he's writing the screenplay and he gets to put all his attention into that. But there is no doubting that even Anomalisa, as much as I don't like that film, it's got a lot of interesting, well, kind of, but especially I'm thinking of Ending Things and Synecdoche, New York have a lot of interesting things going on. And Eternal Sunshine is no different. That That is probably the most accessible Kaufman film, I would say.
With his most accessible actor.
Yeah.
Mm.
But I think overall it was fun. I still stand by liking Jones better, but I guess Clay disagrees because he absolutely loved this.
Huh. It's hard to say.
I mean, you bottomed out at 4.5. That's
I did, but like, yeah, I guess I do like Kaufman more than Jones, because he's such a crucial part to Spike Jones, and the highest rated movies that I have for Spike Jones, aside from Her, which is kind of just like you said, just an emotional film. It's very Hollywood compared to the rest of Spike Jones and Kaufman. But yeah, I mean, Kaufman is more ambitious. I wanted him to take what he learned from Spike and just make something. I feel like he almost achieved that with Anomalisa, but I just want him to come back down to earth a little bit. He's made these big statements. He's done what he had to say. He made the best film ever, but you know, he can relax.
I think my favorite part of this episode was Clay giving Anomalisa a 4.5 and then saying it's not that good.
Yeah.
that
Did I
was
say it's
pretty
not
good.
that good?
Yeah, you were like, "Oh no, I'm not going to rewatch it soon. It's not that good." I was just like,
Oh yeah, it's not that good to warrant a 5-star rewatchable
I don't
film.
know.
But
That's not what you said, but
oh
anyway,
fuck, I'll keep that.
Taavi, what did you think of Kaufman?
Well, I had much more fun with Spike Jones. Honestly, I think the Spike had like they were clever, but they were still fun at the same time.
Yeah.
And while I don't think these are bad films, I think all of them were good or up, but they're just like they're kind of tough to watch, honestly. Like
They
it's
can
not,
kind of, yeah, Kaufman can kind of sometimes come across as like he's making essays rather than films.
yeah,
And it can be a
in a
bit
way.
hard work when you're not in the mood to
Mm.
watch a
Yeah,
visual essay for 2 hours.
yeah, but yeah, it was interesting, but I think I had more fun recording this than watching.
Yeah, I think it's probably the best episode I've been on, to be honest. Just chaos. Absolute chaos.
I guess I've
Um,
said some things
yeah.
I regret, but I'll keep it on there because I'm an honest man.
Yeah.
That's all I can be, really. But no, I stand by my scores. Do you guys know what they're going to be doing in the future, both Spike Jones and Kaufman? I know Spike Jones is slated to be in the upcoming movie by Damien Chazelle that's going to win at eight Oscar. It will get eight Oscars and win Best Picture. He's gonna be in the movie Babylon. So
You're not
but I'm
even
not sure
predicting.
about
You're just saying it's going to happen. It's like,
it
yeah,
will
that will
happen.
happen. That will happen. Yeah.
Yes. Everything where all at once will get snubbed and people will riot in the streets.
Yeah, I
But
think in
Yeah,
terms of Jones, I don't really know. I feel like he's happy to just do music videos and documentaries and short films and stuff. I imagine that's a lot
act
less
occasionally,
stressful.
maybe.
yeah.
It's a lot less
So,
stressful than making feature films. In
the-
terms of
yeah,
Kaufman, I think he just released a book, um,
Oh,
which
I
is
gotta order that.
yeah, it's apparently quite an interesting read. And yeah, I don't know about films. He had I was trying to remember the name of it, but he had one that was in development hell, and it was basically cancelled after a while. Ant Kind is the name of the book, by the way.
I will put that book image on screen. That's something I'm definitely going to be looking forward to in the future. Sad that his production is in dire straits right now, but
Yeah, the
yeah.
film called Franco Francis, and the script got released online, and I did read it, and it sounded insane. and it had in the cast Jack Black, Nicolas Cage, Steve Carell, Catherine Keener, Kate Winslet, Elizabeth Banks, Kevin Kline. So it was quite a big cast that was attached to it. And
wow.
Yeah, I think Spike, doesn't he do like those Jackass films, like produce and write or something?
yeah, I think he's involved with them somehow.
Because I think Spike, I think he was one of the co-creators of Jackass, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I think you might be right.
And I just read in Wikipedia that Kaufman is developing a limited series for HBO.
Oh, that's cool. Nice.
But it doesn't say too much else.
That's interesting.
He's also writing a script about dreams.
Of course he
Okay.
is. Yeah, makes sense.
Come on, Kaufman. Come back down to earth. We don't want you to do that. I'm gonna go ahead and announce our schedule for the upcoming month. I put this in our last episode, but I'm going to add an extra director that Aiden will be on for. But for the next 2 episodes, Tom's going to be with us again. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
We'll be doing the idiosyncratic Wes Anderson. Probably, maybe he could top out Kaufman in my favorite directors that we've done for September. We will see.
If you're gonna, if Wes Anderson bottoms out at 4.5 for you, I'm gonna have to scream. I think Wes will be nice for Taavi. There's a lot of feel good, simple movies.
Yeah.
October for that month, just to add one extra director that Aiden's going to be on the show for, but Tom won't be here for that, is Taavi's one of his favorite directors, Terrence Malick. Another director that's also, from what I've heard, that I haven't seen any of his films. He's quite heavy-handed, but I could be wrong in that assumption, Taavi.
Yeah, he's something. Yeah,
I think you're right.
Yeah. Tom will be on in a future episode. That he'll be doing one of my favorite directors too. So, yep, that's what we got.
Hopefully, as long as everything falls into place, more than likely I will be there. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for listening. We do appreciate your support, and leave a comment on what you think of either Kaufman or Spike Jonze or anybody related to him. Give us a comment on what you think of a Michel Gondry.
Tell us what you think about George Clooney. I really want to know.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone, and see ya next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wow.
Yep.